Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sustainability with Shreya. I'm your host, Shreya Ghudavat, and today we have a truly special guest here with us. Dr. Michael Greger is a physician, New York Times bestselling author, internationally recognized speaker on nutrition, food safety, public health. He's the founder of nutritionfacts.org, a treasure trove of evidence based information, how diet can impact our well being. I've read both of your books. I've read at least two of them. I've got How Not to Age and How Not to Die, which are incredible resources for anyone wanting to know how they can live a better life. Today, we'll deep dive into the world of plant-based nutrition, debunking myths, addressing controversies, and uncovering any practical advice to help you make informed dietary choices. Let's get started. Dr. Michael Greger, it's such an honor. I'm so fired up to have this chat with you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Let's do it.
I'm a huge fan, and I was also at Vegan Camp Out. I was in the front row at Vegan Camp Out, listening to your talk with
Oh,
you in the
fun.
USA, which was incredible. I want to start off by asking you. You've stated that a whole food plant-based diet can not only prevent but also reverse chronic diseases. Considering the prevalence of these conditions, why isn't this approach more widely adopted in mainstream medicine?
Well, I think that, a lot of it is really ignorance. Doctors have a severe nutrition deficiency in education. Most doctors just never taught about the role nutrition can play in the course of illness, and so they graduate without this powerful tool within their medical toolbox. There are also institutional barriers, time constraints, lack of reimbursement. In general, doctors simply aren't paid for, counseling people on how to take better care of themselves. Of course, the drug companies also play a role in influencing medical education and practice. You can, ask your doctor when's the last time they were taken out to dinner by Big Broccoli. It's probably been a while.
Big broccoli, if only that existed. Because I think sickness is profitable, but health is not. That's where the money is.
Or making people sick. That's where
Yeah,
the money.
yeah. But so many people believe that animal products are a superior source of protein, that they're complete in amino profiles. How does plant-based protein compare in terms of both quality and health?
Oh, yeah. One of the reasons that plant sources are preferable is the baggage that comes along with animal protein, right? So food is a package deal. As much as, Burger King says you can have it your way, you can't be like, yeah, I'd like the burger, but hold the saturated fat and the cholesterol and the hormones, blah, blah, blah. Whereas with the baggage that comes with plant protein, oh my God, it's many of the nutrients that most of us are lacking. Most aren't getting enough potassium, not getting enough fiber. And so, whereas, most of our dietary deficiencies are due to the inadequate intake of nutrients concentrated in whole plant foods. And there's certainly enough protein. Most, even people eating strictly plant-based diets get about 60% on average more protein than they need, which is 0.8 grams per healthy kilogram body weight. So wait a second, what about protein quality though? Yes, you can get enough protein. And yes, there's all these benefits of the other constituents that come along with plant protein. What about plant protein quality? So here in the States, 97% of Americans reach the RD age for protein. But the concept of protein quality really is only relevant in the context of protein deficiency. And the 3% who aren't getting enough protein in this country are probably eating like starvation diets, just not getting enough food, period. Now, in a famine context, right, where there's this kwashiorkor bloated belly syndrome kind of thing, this combined protein calorie malnutrition, that kind of situation, then there's not, among people who are not getting enough protein, period, getting protein that more closely resembles our own protein is preferable. So the quote unquote, highest quality protein is cannibalism. But then beneath that, any animal will do. But all plants are complete proteins and that they have all the essential amino acids. But some of them are limiting if you're not getting enough protein, period. But outside of a famine context, the quality of protein should really reflect the clinical effects, in which case plant protein sources are far superior, replacing just 3% of daily calories from animal protein with plant protein, associated with a 10% decreased risk of all-cause mortality. Based on the largest prospective study on diet and health in history, which is the NIH AARP study, and in the Harvard cohorts, another huge Hundreds of thousands of people followed. Plant protein beat out every single type of animal protein, including fish, including chicken, including dairy, for decreasing mortality risk. And so, what do you care about with your protein sources? Does it improve your quality of life and the extent of your lifespan? Yes, when it comes to plant protein sources.
But there are so many critiques that warn that plant-based diets can lead to some sort of deficiencies in nutrients such as B12, iron, omega-3s. How can individuals ensure that they're meeting all of these requirements without animal protein?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So glad you brought it up. So there are two vitamins that are not made by plants. One is vitamin D, which is made by animals such as yourselves when you walk outside. It's the sunshine vitamin. But if you live at certain latitudes during certain winter months, you may not be able to get enough vitamin D for optimal health. And doesn't matter where you live, if you're inside most of the day not getting sunshine, we evolved running around naked in equatorial Africa. And we're just no longer baked in the sun. We wear clothes. We live in houses, and so there's a really epidemic of vitamin D deficiency. And so I recommend people not getting adequate sunshine to take 2,000 units of vitamin D3 a day. And the only other vitamin not made by plants is vitamin B12, not made by animals either, made by little microbes that blank the earth. So we used to get some B12, drink out of a mountain stream or well water or something, but now we chlorinate the water supply to kill off any bacteria. So don't get a lot of B12 in our water anymore. Don't get a lot of cholera either. That's a good thing that we live in such a nice sanitary world. But again, because of the way we live in our modern world, we need to get a regular, reliable source of vitamin B12. Our fellow great apes get all the B12 they need eating bugs, dirt, and feces. I prefer supplements. 2,000 micrograms once a week of cyanocobalamin, which is the most shelf-stable choice. Once a week, costs less than $5 a year. Get all the B12 you need, but critically important, particularly for pregnant breastfeeding women, since infants start out with with no stores essentially. And people can go for months. Some people can go for months without getting B12, but eventually it'll catch up with you. So don't risk it. Get enough. And there's an infographic on nutritionfacts.org for B12, which goes into how much kids need and various fortified food sources. You don't have to take supplements. There are fortified foods like nutritional yeast, which have B12 and how much to take and how often, etc. That's all on the website. And same thing with vitamin D. I go through the latitudes. If you live in this city, then these months you need to take B12, etc. Vitamin D. Depending on where you live and what time of the year it is.
Yeah. Is there anything wrong with supplementation?
Well, here in the States, we have such a poorly regulated supplement market that you can't be sure that what it says on the label is what's actually found in the bottle. But there are some third-party certification services like a USP certification. So you should, if you buy a supplement, see if you can buy one with a little USP certified stamp, and that shows that what is in the pill is what's actually on the label. It doesn't say it's good for you. I mean, USP certifies all sorts of crazy supplements, but they actually guarantee that whatever's in the capsule is what's actually on the label. So then you actually get what you paid for.
Yeah, and there's people that question that, oh, if I'm on a plant-based diet, I'd have to supplement, whereas a lot of people don't realize that the animals are supplemented as well with are injected in fact with B12 and a lot of these antibiotics and hormones in itself. So I think if you can just take the supplement directly, whether
We
that's
can cut
B12,
out the middle moo.
exactly. Dr. Gregor, sorry, there's so much contradictory information out there, right? Especially here in India, information is democratized. There's information easily available. Um, you'd see debates over whether ghee is healthy for you or not. Clarified
Oh,
butter, like ghee is such a big thing. There's people that would tell you, oh, it has like these fat soluble vitamins, and other people would tell you that it's high in saturated fat content. Same with the probiotics in curd, in dahi, as we call it. Like some people say that it's good for gut health, yet obviously dairy consumption has its concerns. Same with animal proteins. How do we navigate this plethora of contradictory information that we get, and how can consumers discern what is credibly dietary advice and make informed nutrition choices based on that?
Oh, that is a fantastic question. Yes, there is this idealistic vision that once this democratization of knowledge came about, no longer could industry hold a stranglehold over information. So, half a century ago, the tobacco industry, at least here in North America, could control the message. So they paid the American Medical Association came out opposed to the Surgeon General's report on smoking after getting a $10 million check from the tobacco industry. They were able to control the media. They were able to. So the message that the consumer got was this, there's a lot still controversy, keep smoking, smoking in moderation is fine. And so there's a mountain of evidence, but it never made it through to consumer. So the thought was, oh my God, once people know the truth, once there's this democratization of knowledge thanks to the internet, well, then the truth will rise to the surface and everyone will have access to this life-changing, life-saving information. Boy, was that wrong. Why? Because it just turns out that bullshit travels so much faster than the truth, and people just love sexy bullshit. And so that's why people believe in flat earth theories and just crazy, the conspiracy theories. And it's almost the opposite. Now people just believe like the craziest stuff. Okay, so what can we do? We can stick to the gold standard in medical science, which is the peer-reviewed medical literature. But there's a very active medical literature publishing houses in India, in the US, in Europe, and they have a bar, they have a peer-review process where you just can't publish anything. On the internet, you can publish anything. You can publish dangerous information. You can tell people to do all sorts of terrible things. But at least in the peer-reviewed medical literature, before publishing something, a reputable medical journal will pass it through, scientific reviewers, and you just can't say stuff that you shouldn't be able to say stuff that isn't true. Sometimes things slip past, but at least it gives you, a level of confidence that it's not just total BS. And there's some journals that are better than others. And so that's really where we should go. And so that's really where nutritionfacts.org came from. I remember in medical school, simple questions I would get from patients during medical training, like, should I take a multivitamin or not? And I was like, I don't know. You go online and the multivitamin company says you should take a vitamin, but I don't know. Seems like there's information on both sides. I don't know how to, and then I could spend a couple hours and figure out the truth. But it's just like no one's got that much time, and a lot of people can't read some of these journals. And so I was like, I need to make a resource where I just take the best available balance of evidence and just make it like short, accessible. Like in 3 minutes, you're gonna know everything that you need to know about whatever food, whatever supplement, whatever disease. And so that's really where it came about. There are other good resources out there. There's good documentaries, other websites, good books, good magazines. And so I encourage people to find reputable sources of information. Why? Because the single most important decision we make every day is what we eat.
Yeah.
And so that's why we need to, if there was ever any decision to be made based on the best available balance of evidence, it should be what we should feed ourselves and our families.
Yeah, you're so right about that. But so many people, even when they're presented with this information, knowing that plant-based food is healthier for you and it is known to reverse and also prevent chronic diseases, they would still defend the literature and the research that comes from the big ag and, of course, the dairy industry or the meat industry, even eggs for that matter. Where does that why do we have that defensiveness, and why do people defend animal products so strongly, even though there's enough information out there that they're either carcinogenic or they're not good for you or it's inflammatory and we don't really need to consume animal products? That's what I meant by navigating this contradictory information that's
Oh,
being
well, I mean, there's this tremendous industry that is trying to muddy the waters, just like the tobacco industry did, just like the soda industry does, there's just so much money to be made that they're able to exert their influence. We're just bombarded all day by ads for fast food and junk food and candy, and and it's like, and where do you see any ads for sweet potatoes and lentils? And I mean, it's just like you're never going to see an ad. Why? Because there's just no one. It's not a branded product. It's not a patented product. You just don't make any, so even a lentil grower is not going to put an ad up for lentils because you'll just buy their competitors' lentils. Like it's just the whole system is set up to with these bad incentives to to get people to eat the most profitable products, which is like brown sugar water in a bottle. Like it's just like almost all profit. And so that's what you get people to eat rather than produce, which is the worst thing to sell. It goes bad. It rots on the shelves. You want a snack cake that sits on the shelf for a while. That's how you make money. And so it's set up. And so we really need to take responsibility for our own health, for our own family's health, and really understand and educate ourselves. What are the healthiest ways to eat? Since again, it's one of our leading cause of death. So, for example, in India, ischemic heart disease, number one killer. So just like in the United States, number one killer of heart disease and the primary driver of the number one killer of men and women in India is LDL cholesterol, high cholesterol. Where does that come from? That comes from saturated fat, trans fat, and dietary cholesterol. So eating egg yolks, eating ghee, these will all raise your LDL cholesterol. Number one killer. Why is the number one killer heart disease in a country where a significant percentage of the population is eating vegetarian? Well, they're eating this. It doesn't matter whether you eat vegetarian or not. It's how much saturated animal fat are you getting. If you're putting ghee in everything, then you're going to run into serious problems. And ghee has an additional problem of not just saturated fat, but the boiling of the clarification process of butter oxidizes the cholesterol, which is particularly damaging. And that may be why we see such bad public health statistics in India.
Wow, that's so interesting, especially because ghee is promoted as a healthy product, something that is good for you, something that's given to, kids since they're born. Everyone would be like, "Oh yeah, I quit milk, but I still consume ghee." Ghee is like that one thing that's super hard to let go of. Even though it's a byproduct of the same milk that's adulterated, somehow we expect the byproduct to be pure, even though the source where it comes from is highly adulterated, which is
Stay
yeah,
away from it.
which is super super interesting. And yeah, you're so right about that, but it's really hard to debate when there's such strong cultural attachment to it, right?
Sure. No,
And
absolutely. No, understandable. And so, yeah. And so, I mean, it's the same thing with, smoking. I mean, people, there's other, but if you just look at the science, it's very clear
hmm.
that these are harmful behaviors.
Yeah. As I mentioned, culture, plant-based diet can be so challenging in cultures with meat-centric cuisines. Have you come across that? Have you seen people use culture as almost a shield to continue defending what they're eating, and what
Oh,
strategies do you
absolutely.
recommend?
Oh, absolutely. But thankfully, many cultures actually have a history of healthier diets if you kind of go back. And so much of this meat centrism, this is a relatively new phenomenon where we're centering our diets around meat. Meat used to be more of kind of a condiment of flavoring just because it was so expensive. And so, so you can usually appeal to, well, wait a second. If you look at the traditional diet, then you should fight back about the against these westernized influences of these transnational corporations that are trying to stuff this junk food down your face. It's funny. I was speaking in somewhere in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, and so I brought that. So I brought that. I was like, well, what was like the traditional people in this area eat? And they said, camels. I was like, oh, never mind. Okay. Not exactly. I guess it makes sense. It's not like you're going to grow crops in the desert. But I was like, yeah, that's probably not a good appeal to traditional diets.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wow. Um, Plant-based meat, the debate around it and how processed it is and how unhealthy it is for you. What should consumers be aware of when incorporating these products? And is processed plant-based meat still better than animal meat?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the. I mean, when you're pitting, if you pit anything against a known human carcinogen, so processed meat is a Category 1 carcinogen according to the IARC, the world's authoritative body on what does and does not cause cancer. So we are as sure that processed meat causes cancer as we are that tobacco and plutonium, etc. Radon causes cancer, and in fact, the number one cancer killer among non-smokers, colorectal cancer. About 18% increased risk for every 50 grams a day of processed meat. Red meat's considered a probable human carcinogen, probably causes cancer. And so, God, compared to that, almost anything could be good. And indeed, so because so, for example, here in the States, processed meat consumption is the number one cause of disability, dietary risk factor for disability. And so, literally anything is better, is better than that. And so, I encourage people to try out some of these plant based meat and milk alternatives as a transitional food towards eating healthier. A lot of us can't go all, can't, have those kind of cultural attachments where it makes it difficult to make abrupt transitions, and so they're used to the same kind of taste, textures, mouthfeels, and so by switching over, they're like, oh, okay, well, this is kind of my same kind of childhood favorites, but just in a healthier form. I don't want people to stall there. I want people to continue to move towards the healthiest foods, which are whole, unprocessed plant foods. But we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. These aren't necessarily healthy foods, but they are healthier foods than the animal products in people's diets.
Hmm. Hmm. What is it about milk, cheese, and other dairy products that causes us to break out? Because I don't know if it's the butter fat or the animal protein, the hormones. Because I was born vegetarian, I was raised vegetarian, and I always had acne issues. And the moment I got off dairy, my acne cleared up. So what's the
Oh,
connection
great, yeah.
between acne and dairy?
Well, so often dairy, we have kind of genetically manipulated dairy cattle to nurse even during pregnancy, and so you're often getting milk from pregnant cattle, which high levels of hormones. So it could be a hormonal issue, or it could be the boosting of a pro-aging enzyme called mTOR, which contributes to acne problems, and that is primarily has to do with the milk protein. The leucine is amino acid concentrated in whey protein, which is one of the dairy proteins, which accelerates mTOR, which is one of the kind of growth hormones that's responsible for putting a few hundred pounds on a baby calf, but not so great for people and their skin
Yeah.
or their prostate cancer or other issues associated with dairy.
Is there a connection between acne and cancer?
Oh yeah. Well, there's there is, and in fact, there's papers talking about how dermatologists can save people's lives because you can make the dietary changes to clear up their acne, or the same dietary changes that can prevent some of these long-term chronic diseases. And so dairy is definitively linked to Parkinson's disease, to prostate cancer, and so by whatever it takes to get people to cut dairy out of the diet, realize, I mean, no species drinks milk after infancy, and drinking milk of another species is just that mismatch can lead to this persistence growth signaling, which can not only drive the growth of acne but drive the growth of certain hormone sensitive tumors in the body.
Hmm. There's an established link between diet and mental health. And what does the research say about plant-based diet and how it impacts our mental health and also our well-being?
Well, there's only a few interventional trials. So there are studies showing that people who eat healthier tend to feel healthier, but you don't know if that's reverse causation, right? Are people eating healthier because they feel healthier, or feel healthier because they're eating healthier? You don't need comfort foods if you don't need to be comforted. But so that's why you need interventional trials. You actually change people's diets and you see what happens. This is done here in the States in the University of Arizona, where they took people and randomized them to continue to eat their regular diet or to remove eggs, chicken, and other meat. from their diet, thinking it's the arachidonic acid, this pro-inflammatory omega-6 fatty acid found predominantly in eggs and chicken, which they thought was causing neuroinflammation, inflammation in the brain. And within 2 weeks, removing eggs, chicken, and other meat from people's diet got a significant improvement in mood, less anxiety, less depressive symptoms. It is the most powerful dietary intervention ever published in the peer-reviewed medical literature, and that was putting people, in that case, it was a lacto-vegan diet.
I've watched this documentary on Netflix. I think it's called Live 200. It's about blue zones and how people living up to 100 years of age, they primarily consumed a plant-based diet. Do you have anything to say about blue zone diets or the centurion diets as they call it?
Absolutely, right? So based on studies of identical twins, only about 25% of the difference in lifespan between people is due to genetics. So, for what we can do, the majority of which we have some control, is we look to the blue zones, these areas of exceptional longevity around the world. More than 150 dietary surveys have been done among the world's longest living people and found that they all not just eat, center their diets around whole plant foods, but specifically use as their primary protein source some sort of legume, beans, split pea, chickpea, or lentils. So, center our diets around legumes. Is probably the most important dietary recommendation we can get from the Blue Zones. But it's actually Blue Zones food guidelines based on those dietary surveys. The number one thing is make your diet at least 95% plant-based. And then they talk about eating less processed foods, cutting out dairy, cutting down on fish, cutting back on meat. Water is the best beverage. Nuts is the healthiest snack.
It's a personal criticism that I receive when I talk about me being plant based. I've been vegan for 8 years, and people tell me, oh, I tried doing that for 2 months. I tried doing that for 6 months, and I lost a lot of muscle. I lost a lot of weight. And when they ask me about my protein sources, and if I tell them I consume a lot of lentils, I consume tofu, I consume tempeh, and people immediately tell me, no, 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 lentil has a lot of carbs. It doesn't have protein. It just it's mostly carbs. What are the most efficient forms of plant-based protein? And is it true that you lose muscle mass after being on a whole food plant-based diet?
So the healthiest sources of protein are the legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils. Absolutely, and for lots of reasons, primarily because of all the other wonderful things in them. But that's the place we should get most of our protein. That's where all the blue zones, the longest and healthiest living people, center their diets around as a primary source of protein. Now, what plant-based diets can do is cause weight loss. And when you lose weight, you also lose muscle mass.
Hmm.
So it's about 25% of the weight people lose when they lose weight is lean mass. So when you look on the scale, if you lost, if you lose 4 pounds, 1 pound 3 pounds may be fat, 1 pound may be lean mass. It's because you don't need as much muscle because you're carrying around less weight. Imagine carrying around a 50-pound backpack everywhere you went. Every time you walked around a room, you had a 50-pound backpack. Well, you need muscles to carry around a 50-pound backpack. If you take off a 50-pound backpack, you're unless you do resistance exercise, unless you do strength training, you're not going to maintain that muscle mass.
Hmm.
And so that's why people losing weight through bariatric surgery or weight loss drugs or a healthier diet, they're going to lose lean mass. Period. And so now that's good in that you're losing more fat than you are muscle, and so your body composition is getting better, getting leaner. But anytime you do weight loss, we encourage people to do strength training to maintain that level of lean mass. And you do enough strength training, you can get zero loss of lean mass and just lose straight body weight by eating healthier. But you have to put in the work.
Yeah. So it is possible to be muscular, to be fit, to be
Oh,
athletic
absolutely.
on a plant-based diet.
Absolutely.
Any top tips for athletes and bodybuilders out there?
Oh, there's a wonderful documentary, The Game Changers.
Hmm.
I encourage anyone who's interested in plant based athletics to check it out.
All right. There is a perception, though, that plant based diets are expensive or less accessible. Is there any way people can do this while making sure it's nutritionally adequate on a budget?
Look, dried beans, peas, lentils, these are the cheapest sources of protein. In fact, you can do, there's studies showing that, average family can save hundreds of dollars a year by eating healthier because, produce, you can get, some of the healthiest foods like sweet potatoes and cabbage are actually some of the healthiest foods, dried pulses. And so the healthiest foods, the cheapest foods, often the most environmentally friendly foods. And so it's kind of a win 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 situation across the board.
Love that.
Unfortunately, I got to run to my next interview.
I have a very quick rapid fire for you.
Okay.
It'll just take a couple of minutes, which is the natural argument. If you had to debunk the natural argument that humans have historically eaten meat for thousands of years, how do you, and it's a necessary component of our diet, how do you debunk that? If you had to do
Well, I
that.
mean, if you want to appeal to nature, then you say, well, wait a second. We've been around for more than a couple thousand years. So we split with our great ape ancestors in the Miocene era 20 million years ago and only started eating meat regularly 2 million years ago in the Paleolithic period when we started to figured out how to use tools. So for the first 90% of our evolution as hominoids, on this planet, we ate what the rest of our great ape cousins eat, almost a strictly plant-based diet. And so if we want to appeal to nature, that's where our digestive systems or our biochemistry evolved. That's why we lost the ability to make vitamin C. Most other animals just make their own vitamin C. We scrapped it. We junked the DNA to make it because we're eating fruit and leaves all day. There's no reason to. So if you want to appeal to nature, but no need to appeal to nature because we have science now. I mean, appeal to nature is like we shouldn't wear shoes. Why? Because we never wore shoes. Well, no, shoes can help. We shouldn't, uh, we have science. The science has helped us. That's wonderful. That's a great thing. And so we don't need to be like, well, there's some folk wisdom that, you know, adding heavy metals to some remedy or something is good for you. No, we know. No, we don't want to eat lead and mercury. And I mean, that's the so-called traditional wisdom was smart in some ways, but terribly off base in other ways. And that's what we have, scientific inquiry for to get the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah, my last question to you, Dr. Greger. Any advice to anyone listening to this? Any one simple habit that someone can do that can significantly improve their health, or anyone who's afraid of transitioning to a plant based diet? Any advice that you have to give to someone listening to this based on your years of research?
Look, it's your body, your choice. But the good news is we have tremendous power over our health, destiny, and longevity, and the vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a healthy enough plant-based diet and lifestyle. And it's never too late to start eating healthier, to start moving, to stop smoking. And we really do have the power.
Love that so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Greger. I really appreciate your time, the work that you've done. You've changed millions of lives, and I know you're going to continue doing so. Appreciate it.
Keep up the great work yourself.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.